Hello, Toon Army. Welcome to episode 2 of the United State, our first official episode with our, format going forward. It's been a week. It's been a crazy week for Newcastle fans. I'm Shade. This is my co-host, Rich. How you doing, Rich?
I'm doing great.
I'm doing fantastic.
I'm doing fantastic.
This is the best week of my life, man.
I told you, once the new owner's in, it's game on. That was the last week. See, I think it's a good omen. You see, last episode, we signed off. And obviously, you said Wednesday. Have you seen the news? What's going on? And obviously with the ban lifting. So that obviously our group has done a lot of work behind the scenes, which is quite good for the mind. Sometimes out of sight, out of mind, just let us support the club. Thing. There's a lot of work that goes into these takeovers, a lot of legal things that go on to. There's a legal binding contract that the government or the state won't have any run. Newcastle United, obviously, we're controlled by the fund, public investment fund. But obviously with the RB Sports Media and Amanda Stabley having kind of chairheading the direction of the club, I think that's very important.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, I didn't sleep at all Wednesday night. I'm definitely hanging today. So if I'm a little sluggish, you know why, but I have a feeling you're hanging as well since we were together yesterday.
There was a few black and white beers. Yeah, absolutely.
Good vibes all day yesterday. I totally was on the wagon Wednesday night. I texted you. I was like, I know this is happening. It's done. It's dusted. We're free. And I know you were a little more hesitant to get as excited as I was Wednesday, but rightfully so. It's been a long road.
Mm-hmm. I was. I think just we've all been here before. It was last year, but I always knew in the back of my mind that Mike Ashley, for as bad as he was, he always wanted to sell the club. He always wanted to take it on, but in looking back, he really just wanted to promote himself and his brand.
Course,
changing the name, globalizing his brand and through our team instead of our team. So
But you know what, mate? Newcastle United is finally free. The shackles are off. Even our social media seems like, I don't know what basement he was keeping them in, only allowing them to post once a month or something like that, because all day today they've been posting all this positive and fun stuff, and I'm just like, what cell have you been released from?
Right, what cell exactly? And that's what we were saying before the show, is that you can tell that all of the Newcastle staff have been under a spell.
Under this that's the best way to put it.
Cloak of just dictatorship control. And anyone watched the Lego movie, it's like president business, it's like control. It's like, you must do as I say, and you will get in line, and even closing down the supporter shop, the supporter shop. And obviously we are understaffed as a club, severely. So I'm excited for the team to improve.
We may be understaffed, but we're not underfunded anymore.
But I'm just excited for Newcastle.
I am too. I'm excited for
the city of Newcastle.
The city, exactly.
It's almost going to expand the city. We'll be a city of the north. You know what I mean? And I think, but credit to our fan base, the fan base, the magnificent Magpies and Geordies, the Toon Army. It goes around the world. It just echoes around the world. It's such a special club, and we'll find out today with our guests. But it's the fans of what pulled it through. I know Amanda Staley's done a lot of work behind the scenes, and obviously money, but the fans make these clubs attractive. Just look at Maximin, look at Wilson. They're tweeting, and they're allowed to tweet.
The shackles are off, man. The shackles are off. And like I said, I couldn't be happier. I can't stop smiling. I haven't stopped smiling since Wednesday night. And And I'm really happy to be here talking with you about it. I'm really happy about, you know, episode 2, our first kind of official episode after doing our introductory one. And so we should get into that, because I could sit here and talk to you about Takeover stuff for another 10 hours, basically like I did yesterday when we were on it. But we do have business to attend to. We do have an awesome program for today. So our first guest is going to be Adam Beckett. He's a US-based board member for the Newcastle United Supporters Trust. And we're really, really happy to have him on, talk about the takeover, share the excitement, but also kind of tell us his story and how he became not only a board member for the trust, but also, you know, just a Newcastle fan that now lives in America. And then I'm also super excited to be able to do a little feature on our first ever US Toon Army Supporters Group guest, which is going to be Toon Army Denver out of Colorado. And I'm really excited to kind of learn about their story and share it with all of you. So without much further ado, I think we're going to get started on our programming. And we're going to start with Adam Beckett from the Newcastle United Supporters Trust.
Let's do it.
All right, Adam, welcome to the United States. Happy to have you. Before we get started on everything that we're going to talk about today, I think that the most important thing that we've got to take care of is having a cheers to the greatest week ever. So
cheers, boys.
Bottles. The end of Ashley to the takeover. Cheers.
Cheers.
What a week, eh?
Fantastic.
So I think before we start talking about, you know, you specifically in your story, we have to talk about the takeover. I mean, how could we not? It's been a long time coming, and I'm so happy to see it over the line. I know Rich is too. I know you are. I know every Newcastle fan in the world probably is. How could they not be? So why don't we first just kind of hear your thoughts on how everything went down this week?
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, it's been a whirlwind, right? Really, for all of us. I mean, if you look back to last week, to start with the cat tribunal, the most watched cat tribunal in history, which we're probably all trying to make sense of still, right? Or at least the highlights of. And then, you know, the Wolves game, it really did feel like a bottom out for the club, right? It felt like there was nothing else that could go wrong coming out of that game. Not just the performance, but the way it felt as fans. It was just such a difficult time. I mean, we're all a little bit unique. We have to watch it instead of actually going physically to watch the games as fans. But yeah, just watching the performance, I wasn't even angry when the goals went in. It was just this level of sort of apathy and despair that has just really sunk in as Newcastle fans over the last 14 years or so. And then it rolled into this week, and it just sort of felt different, and everything about the club was evolving so quickly. And Wednesday and Thursday come around, and you know, the gears just shifted completely. I mean, I think, you know, we're still all recovering in some ways just from how quickly it all went down publicly. I mean, it sounds like there were some things developing, you know, in the background and behind closed doors and so on, which we'll never get the full details of. Not that we need them, but the breakneck pace at which the last sort of 48 hours came around, I think it shocked fans, and it probably shocked the new owners as well, just how quickly it all got cleaned up in the last few days or the last 24 hours. But yeah, it's a dramatic change in culture. It's a dramatic change in philosophy. It's going to require, I think, some patience. It's going to require giving the new owners a bit of space to maneuver, which I think is going to be difficult because we're all so anxious to see positive change. We're also anxious to see things improve both on and off the pitch, but they're going to need a little bit of time. And, you know, we're recording this on the day that they've just literally walked into the stadium for the first time and met the staff and obviously met fans outside. Decisions will have to be made, you know, over the course of the next 72 hours, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's a huge change to how we all feel. And I think I tweeted something sort of midweek about how it's very hard to explain to people who aren't Newcastle fans just sort of how dramatically this changes your perspective on life And I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but it just is what it is, right? I mean, I woke up with a huge smile on my face this morning, a genuine smile on my face for the first time.
I'm hungover, but I'm smiling.
Well, yeah, a little bit hungover, so part drunk, part happy, but just so incredibly different from how it feels. And again, Newcastle fans understand this, but others probably won't. But it doesn't take you long when you wake up in the Ashley era to just feel sluggish, just feel this sort of horrible, tense feel like, oh, whatever else happens today, Mike Ashley still owns Newcastle United. And now that isn't true.
Yeah.
And that's a seriously different feeling. 14 years is a long time. I'm about to turn 37. So, you know, for a decent portion of my life, particularly my American life, which we'll talk about later, Mike Ashley has owned the club. In fact, last night I was sitting with my wife. We were having a bottle of champagne celebrating the takeover. And we had to think back as to how long we had been together before Mike Ashley. So there's a sort of, you know, post Mike Ashley or before Mike Ashley feeling going on right now. So it's a tremendous feeling. And obviously we're looking up in so many ways for the first time. But yeah, it's a huge transition for us all. You know, I hope the new owners get a chance to take a beat and sort of relax for a moment before they get stuck into everything they've got to handle over the next 30, 60, 90 days and so on.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you really kind of just explained how all of us were feeling after Wolves, you know. Obviously, like, as a Newcastle fan, but even just a little more selfishly on our end, I remember when we were relegated last time and I was living out here and you know, like Toon Army San Diego and a lot of the other supporters groups have gained some momentum since we popped back up. And you know, I found myself, you know, I think everyone that follows me knows I try to stay as positive as I can. And I love being positive and I love Newcastle. But I remember after that match, I even looked at Rich and I was just like, mate, if we go down, like all the momentum we've gained for our group out here is gone because we won't be able to watch the matches at our local. We won't be able to do this. We won't be able to do that. And obviously that's a very like selfish approach just from our local level. But then, you know, and then that also bleeds into every aspect, you know, every corner of the world where a Newcastle fan is, right? Even in Newcastle. And it's just such a dramatic shift from 1 week ago. Right. Yeah. And I couldn't, you know, obviously I couldn't be more happy about it. And so that's definitely been crazy. I mean, I know it is early days for the takeover, but you know, like it's like we talked about before we had you on. It's just nice to see our social media. Our social media person's been taken out of whatever cell that they've been locked away in for 14 years, and you know, and everyone knows me, like knows that I became a fan during the Ashley era. So it's like all I know is what I've read prior to our glory days, but all I know personally from experience is Mike Ashley. And, you know, I've loved our club ever since the day I went to my first match and everything like that. And everyone knows that story, but obviously like it's been frustrating and hard. And it really does feel like a new dawn, which, you know, and then Rich, obviously, you know, you've been a supporter longer than me. If there's anything you want to bring into that conversation, that aspect of the conversation.
No, exactly. There's just an overwhelming feeling of gratitude right now. And our friend Simon, who's a Geordie, he's quite a stereotypical Geordie, a little bit miserable, a bit pessimistic. If he's listening, he'll be listening to this.
Yeah, he's the Toon Army San Diego founding member. He was walking down 30th Street, what we call here in North Park, and just with tears in his eyes. You know, just basically an overwhelming of just this belief again, because it's a magical club, you know, and no one understands that more than the Geordies, you know. I just look at the scenes outside last night at St. James's Park, you know, we were FaceTiming with Chris and that kind of thing, you know, just amazing. I was telling all my clients and all my friends yesterday that what had happened, and it's quite unbelievable. They just don't understand, you know. And it makes you think that there's obviously been a lot of work behind the scenes, whether it be Amanda Staveley or the PIF
you know, or the Saudi government about removing the ban of this piracy, you know, so of being sports. It must have been the hard work must have been done to get the deal done beforehand. Obviously, whether it was last year or the, you know, in the January transfer window, it's obviously been boiling along, and she hasn't stopped. And that's what's going to take to complete something of this magnitude, you know.
And so, you know, before we kind of talk about your story, just because we're talking about the takeover, was like, we know that there were things in the works, you know, behind the scenes that no one was really aware of, and you know, we're grateful that that had happened and everything like that. But you know, the trust released this survey to all its members and everything a week ago, and that was great. The coverage on that was amazing and needed, and you know, I was happy to participate in that vote and everything like that. But did any of you have any idea that what was going to come within 7 days of that? Because it's pretty much been an even kind of crazier week for the trust, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it would make a great story if I could say that we had some sort of insider information, but the truth is we didn't. I mean, we had an incredibly important weekend, as we were talking about last weekend after the Wolves game. We met twice, you know, within 24 hours to discuss some things that we thought were really important to our members, and how to collect that information, how to produce that information, and then sort of how to campaign for that information to represent members the best way that we could. I mean, people sometimes, I think, forget that we are a members-based democratic system. So we have processes in place to make sure that we do things the right way with the right information. And sometimes we have to put sort of our immediate personal feelings to the side and be less reactionary and be a bit more diplomatic in the way we do things. So yeah, we had data from a survey that we had done over the last 6 to 8 weeks, but we really felt like we needed sort of an immediate pulse of our members. So on Sunday and Monday, we ran a very quick, very simple, I think 3-question poll that we put together as a board. And we got 5,600 responses in 24 hours. So, you know, almost 50% of our members voted in 24 hours. In fact, it wasn't even 24, it was like 18 hours that we ran that survey. And it was obviously overwhelming. I forget the exact number, but something like 95% felt like that it was time for Steve Bruce to leave the club, whether it was on his own terms or whether it was, you know, the club acting and removing him from his position. And that wasn't easy. I mean, don't get me wrong. We all felt the same way. You know, we were a unanimous board in the fact that Steve Bruce needed to leave the club. But, you know, the discussion around whether we publicly call for a human to be fired from their job is not an easy thing, right? That's something that none of us would want to have done to us. So we talked a lot about that sort of line in the sand and how to word that and how to appropriately position that. And trust me, it was something we deliberated for a while on. But at the end of the day, we are a trust democratically elected to represent the fans of a football club. And that's ultimately what we all are. We are football fans, and we volunteer to be on a board of a trust that is intending to represent its members. So we had to do it. In the end, that's what we decided on. So yeah, we put all that together in 72 hours or so, and then within 24 hours of that and all of the great media coverage we got, you know, the news breaks that the log jam has come to a resolution one way or another, and you know, barely 24 hours after that, the takeover was done. So, you know, no doubt it was a whirlwind for the trust, but it was a whirlwind for all fans. And, you know, at the end of the day, we are just fans, like I said.
Yeah. That's, I mean, it's just crazy. And so I know it's definitely early days for the takeover, and it's, you know, our new regime and everything like that. But, you know, I have to ask, is there anything going on with the trust right now and our new owners? Has that conversation started yet? Is there anything you can share with our listeners about that?
Well, there's nothing concrete to share yet in terms of sort of plans or dates or times or anything like that. But Amanda Stavely in particular has always been very vocal about the importance of the fan base first, but also the trust's role in the club's future. So, you know, we penned an open letter to the new owners on the day of the takeover. We also posted that on our website. We emailed it to our members, as well as just a very simple template of our vision as a trust board for what that relationship could look like and sort of our focus as a club going forward. So, yeah, I mean, I'm fully hoping that we can have significantly better communication and a much, much stronger relationship with the new owners than we did with the previous. So, you know, more to come on that. Hopefully within the next week or 10 days, there'll be a bit more of an update on that. But yeah, fingers crossed. We're very, very positive about the signs and the sounds of the first few days.
Yeah, I mean, it's just surreal, and I'm sure Rich will agree, to just hear an owner of Newcastle talk about fans being first, right? Like,
yeah,
I've never even experienced that, right? Like, I mean, you know, you guys remember pre-Ashley era, but like, I don't even know what that's like.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think she's a fan at heart for sure. You know, she's a Northern lass and she's obviously a British entrepreneur. And you know, her stories of, you know, going up to the club and just having it starts with a vision that she had. I just think she has this fantastic vision, and obviously with her contacts in the Middle East and her husband and the Reuben brothers, I just think she's just mixed with the right people and just created that right vision for them, and just know she kind of gets it, you know, get what's it going to take to go forward in this new era. Because we were saying, you know, for the club to progress, you know, to be in a top 10 club, never mind Champions League or top 6, right? Right. I know we're now one of the big 7, essentially, right? We're the big one.
We're the big one. I don't know what you're talking
about. We're Tony Soprano now.
It's so weird to say.
That's it. But you know, even like the attitude of what they're like, they're very forward thinking. You know, being ran by a woman, which is quite amazing now. You know, and
yeah.
Just the support of the fans yesterday, to see the scenes, like no question of like where you're from, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
very welcoming. Always very welcoming of any player from any country. Very global as a brand, and I think now with these owners, it's just going to take it to the very next level, basically.
Yeah, it's very inspirational.
It is
for a fan to feel that connection instantaneously. I mean, we joked in the pre-show that, you know, there's been more communication in the last 24 hours with the fans from the new ownership than there was really in the 14 years before that. And there are people, like you said, that don't know anything other than the Mike Ashley way of doing things. And I heard a bunch of interviews yesterday with, you know, kids that are 18, 19, 20 that, to your point, they don't know Newcastle before the Mike Ashley era. They don't remember Newcastle before the Mike Ashley era. And to think that we have another shot at that type of history, it's incredible. And it's a little bit emotional. We're all exhausted and drained from the last couple of days, but it's just so exciting to think that those days are right around the corner. I mean, my wife said to me last night, the thing she's most excited about is maybe having some happier weekends around the corner. In particular, in my family with 2 young kids, 7 and 3, you know, they have to creep up the stairs to see what the Newcastle score is on a Saturday morning before they ask me how I'm doing or what we're doing that weekend or what the day is going to be like. It's like, did Newcastle get a point? Did Newcastle win? Is that going to be okay? Yeah. There are some opportunities for some better days like that. And that's a huge difference just in a couple of days. Just incredible.
I got goosebumps with you just saying all that.
It's the same in every household.
I've been so emotional for the past 48 hours. Like,
yeah.
But you're right, Adam. It's like, you know, obviously we spread our love for Newcastle to everyone we see, and it's like, did Newcastle win? No, oh, it's okay, babe.
Yeah,
yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, it's just like, and they're very. I'm just like, well, we're a great club. We just like got a really crappy owner. Just like,
yeah.
Now you mentioned about, you know, communication with the previous helm being quite bleak. Maybe as, for the past 14 years. Was there any care, communication, or was it quite blunt?
Well, I'll say this. Part of one of the important roles that the trust fulfills is helping supporters from an advocacy standpoint. So whether that's sort of the match day experience or access to the stadium or help around travel to games, we're obviously talking domestically here, not internationally, but
of course, yeah.
That's one of the important roles that the trust fulfills. And usually one way or another, we found a way to help the people that needed helping. But it often took too long, or it took too many conversations, or we had to jump through too many hoops. And that was feedback we were constantly giving the club, is that this is just not easy. It's not any one individual's fault, just the system that was in place, the lack of infrastructure, the lack of staffing, particularly around season ticket issues, particularly during lockdown. I know that sort of made national media, the fact that Newcastle was holding on to millions of dollars of people's refunds. I mean, we were involved a great deal in trying to help people around that. And no board is perfect. Could we have done things better? I'm sure we could have in hindsight. But at the time, we were trying to do the best with what we had. And here's to hoping that there will be more staff really in every department of the club going forward. I mean, it's been well documented that not only did Newcastle only have one board member, Lee Charnley, but really every department of the club was understaffed, particularly during furlough. And again, that made national media, the way that Newcastle handled the furlough program in the UK. But I remember back to the last time that I was in England, which was September of 19. I went to the 0-0 with Brighton, which felt like a low point then. But we really just continued to hit new low points, which is unbelievable. It was the second debut of Andy Carroll. That was probably the highlight. But the day before the game, I went on a stadium tour, which I had not done since I was, I don't know, 11 or 12 maybe. So, a good period of time. I remember talking to the tour guide. There was only, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 of us on the tour. So it was a very personal experience. A really great tour, very well done by the person that did it.
Oh,
but you could just sense that the staff in the club and the foundation was, at the time, their offices were right there at the same entrance in the Millburn stand. You could just tell there was this sort of sense of apathy, even within the staff, not to their own fault, but just, again, that constant feeling that the club was stuck waiting for something else to happen. And of course, this was before this takeover really got rolling. This was when there was really no bright future ahead, if you will, before COVID. Believe it or not, there was a world before COVID. So I keep thinking back to that guy that gave me the stadium tour, and I'm like, I just want that guy to have some help. I want that guy to have a positive outlook the next time he does a stadium tour. And I feel like his next one this week, he probably will for the first time. And I can't wait to go back. I've got some plans, fingers crossed, for early December to go back and do it all again. And hopefully I run into that guy, because I can't wait to shake it. He won't remember me, of course, but I can't wait to shake his hand and just say, hey, better times are ahead, my friend. Finally, better times are ahead.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's just so spot on, right? And I think that it's something that everyone can relate to, and kind of talk, you kind of started to talk about, when you were last there, and then going back prior to that, and we should dive into kind of your story and everything. But before we do, I do have one last question for you, just in light of the new takeover, and mainly because me and Rich were talking about it last night. Do you think that Brucey gets his 1000th match for us at Spurs, or what are your thoughts on that?
I just don't see how that's possible.
I know, right?
I just don't see how they can justify that, even if they need to justify it. I mean, 1,000 games apart, there's just sort of no room for sentiment right now. As bad as that sounds, if we were 7 games in, sitting in 12th or something, 10th, something like that, they probably would give him a little more time. But, you know, as at the time of recording this, I can't see how they can justify letting that man even coach another practice. I think everything about the club feels fresh, new, momentum, positivity. If Steve Bruce is standing in that dugout on Sunday against Spurs, they just lose a bit of that.
They do.
And they're not going to have a new manager in place by that time. I don't think that would be remarkable if they can get the manager they want in just a few days. But there's no reason why Graham Jones or Ben Dawson, who's done it before during that previous transition, why they can't be in the dugout for a game or two. You know, if we get to 8 games, 9 games, the season's not lost, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to get worse necessarily than it is after 7 games. I just think that they've got to make a sort of positive, determinate move on the manager, because at the end of the day, if we're talking about things they can do in the short term to sort of capture that positivity, 95% of Newcastle fans want a different manager. Facts are the facts, right? We haven't won in 7 games. I think it's 7 wins in 38, something. You know, one of those stats has been going around this week. The positive change, candidly, it starts with firing Steve Bruce. And the only reason, in my opinion, that he wasn't fired before now was a brinkmanship game between Ashley and Bruce, right? Bruce wasn't going to quit because he knew he'd be leaving whatever, 3 or 4 million pounds on the table if he did.
Yeah.
Ashley wasn't going to fire him because he felt, as it turns out correctly, he felt that he could get his takeover done before he would have to make that 4 million pound decision. In any normal circumstances, if you go 7 games without winning to start a season against the opposition we've had, I'll come back to that in a second, your manager doesn't survive that. The point I was making about 7 games without a win, we all know that Rafa went, I think, 11 games without a win 3 seasons ago, but I think he played the entire top 6 during that time. I might be wrong, a game or 2 off. Maybe it was the top 4. Very, very difficult start to the season. Bruce has not had a difficult start to the season, right?
No.
We've played home games against teams that finished below us last season. We didn't win any of those. Outside of Man U, there's really no game that we definitely shouldn't have got something from during that period. So to lose
more,
we should have at least 2 wins right now. And if we had 2 wins right now, we'd be whatever, 14th, and maybe he gets his 1000th game. But I can't see how he survives the next couple of days. And if it takes a game or 2 with a caretaker manager before they get someone that they really think can see their vision through, that's what we're going to have to put up with. But it's an interesting talking point, given that they've come in when they've come in, because the club is 18th or 19th. The club is second bottom in the Premier League. In the very short term, there's a huge problem that these new owners have to deal with. This club needs to win some games quickly. They cannot afford to go another 5 games without a win. So something has to happen quick. And I'm not even talking about relegation. Frankly, I'm talking about getting the manager you want. How do you do that if you're bottom of the league? I've seen some talk about Antonio Conte and Zinedine Zidane. Like, they're not coming to manage a team bottom of the Premier League. I guarantee you that. It's going to take an awful lot of money to convince Antonio Conte to come manage a team that's bottom of the league. But even if you get to January, let's go out 3 months or so. If you're in the bottom 3, how do you go convince player A, player B, player C that, hey, trust us, come in now. We won't get relegated, we promise, and we'll rebuild for next season. So really, there's a huge amount that sort of is critical around the next 2 months of the season. You know, if Newcastle can get to January with a new manager and they're outside of the relegation zone, then the rebuild starts then. If they don't, if they're in the relegation zone, then the whole of the rest of the season, really a lost year for them, is just about not getting relegated. And that's a completely different perspective that this club could have. I know we're only 7 games in, but we haven't won any of them. That's really significant, in my opinion. So all of the long-term commitments, the long-term promises, the investment, super exciting. Obviously, we're a potential superpower in world football, but we're 19th as we sit here right now. And that's really important, I think.
No, I totally agree with you. You know, like I know that there's been some quotes going around on social media of, you know, with Brucey kind of trying to tug on people's heartstrings a bit and everything like that. And you know, like I've said before, like I always try and stay positive and all of this stuff. But when it comes to that scenario, like I am very cutthroat. Like I want him out of our club, and I have no shame in saying that.
Yeah,
I really don't care about his 1000th game. You know, for lack of better words, I don't. I want us to, like you said, even if it is just kind of a honeymoon bounce from either Graham Jones or somebody else taking an interim role and getting a couple, you know, some more points and a couple wins under our belt. I think that is more important to everything that's going on than Brucey's record, especially considering, like, I get it. It's your 1000th game managing, but your record's not amazing. So I don't, you know, I don't think it's deserved. And I really don't think that as candidly as I could say, I don't think that any sympathy is needed in that situation. What do you think, Rich?
Unfortunately, you know, Brucey is not the master tactician, you know. You know what I mean? So unfortunately, Steve Bruce is kind of shot in the dark a little bit with his changing of formation halfway through it. We go a goal down, we change formation. And not to get into tactics or what we should do, but it's just the facts. There's a lot of talent in our coaching department. You know, Simon Smith's been there for years. Steve Harper, you know, and you know, Graham Jones there's no, you know, he's not a dummy. You know what I mean? He knows how to set up a team and work with Southgate. So of course he could be an interim manager, but as you rightly say, a clean slate is kind of needed to.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Bruce, and I've heard this narrative over the last 24 hours, is that, you know, outside the Newcastle fan base, he probably will, you know, history will be kind to what he's had to put up with from an outside perspective.
Totally.
Right? You know, not tomorrow, not next week, but at some point down the road, history will be kind. They always talk about that with presidents over here, don't they? Like, how will history remember this presidency or that presidency? You know, outside the fan base, he will have some sympathy, and that's justified in some way. The club has left him out to dry on a couple of occasions, right? Not only have they not backed him in the transfer market, they've also left him to be the only spokesperson for the club, and that's a very difficult situation. When you have no control over the things you're being held accountable for in the media, that's very difficult. But ultimately, this is sports. You deserve what you get, right? For too long now, Steve Bruce he's been mucking around with formations, players out of position, formations that don't make sense, terrible in-game tactics. At the end of the day, he deserves to get fired based on his performance. Forget the belittling the fan base. Forget the narrative around just ticking along, trying not to get fired or relegated. Forget all of that stuff. The games, the tactics in the games, the results of the games, the formations, the players. For those reasons alone, he deserves to be fired. Like I said, that's my expectation, that he is not in the dugout for the game against Spurs on Sunday.
Yeah, and you know, and the thing too, at the end of the day, is even if he does have any tears to shed while he's being walked out of our club, like, he has £3 to £4 million to wipe it up with.
Yeah.
So like, it's, you know, he gets a bonus for leaving, and it's not like they're not going to pay that. That's going to be honored.
No, I mean, I have no sympathy for football managers that get fired because they get paid millions of dollars to do it. So no sympathy at all.
What I was saying to Shay last night, it'll be a mutual consent.
Oh, yeah.
Behind the scenes, like, he's always like put on this kind of front over the past 2 years about, I don't really speak to Mike Ashley. It's all Liam every day and that kind of thing. You know, he's a canny guy with the media. Just kind of a short story. And then, you know, he recently got quite reactive with certain journalists when, you know, the journalists know how to poke the bear a little bit. So, no. But we should get back to Adam's story.
Yeah. I mean, we could, like I said, we could talk Takeover for hours and speculate and everything like that. But that's, you know, one of the reasons that you're here. But really, the main reason is, you know, we wanted to have you on the show and talk to you because you are in this unique position, being you know, a trust board member, but also based in America. And obviously, we're both based in America as well. And that's kind of the theme of this show and everything. So we want to kind of get to know your story and how you not only came to be a Newcastle fan, but also how you have come to, you know, Minnesota, and then also how you've come to be a board member on the trust, and especially during this exciting time for our club. So I think really the first question that I have is because you're originally from London, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you end up becoming a Toon supporter?
Yeah. So it's sort of a strange story, actually. So as a kid, there was a game in the UK called Subbuteo, which is not well known in America, but well known in the UK.
And it's I don't.
Yeah. So
I love it.
Yeah. So you sort of flick players along a felt green pitch and kick the ball down. There's a game played in bars over here that's very similar. But so when I was a kid, probably 6 or 7 or 8, when you bought Subbuteo, it came with a blue team and a red team. And they weren't clubs, they were just a blue team and a red team. But then eventually you could start buying different colored teams to play. And the first one my parents bought me was the black and white striped team.
Okay.
It wasn't Newcastle, it was just the black and white striped team. So being, you know, an inquisitive 7-year-old or 8-year-old or whatever it was, I was like, oh, let me find a black and white team to support. So this is probably 92 or 3, give or take a year. And fortunately or unfortunately, I found Newcastle and not like Notts County, which was the other black and white striped team back then. So when we had the blue team and the red team, it was Chelsea and Nottingham Forest, the two my brother and I decided. My brother's a couple of years older than me. He's actually an Arsenal fan. But that was who we had. It was Nottingham Forest and Chelsea. And then we got the black and white team, and it was Newcastle. That was 92, 93. So Newcastle were just, you know, getting promoted to the Premier League under Keegan and all of that sort of rebirth of the club, another rebirth of the club, ironically. So that's how I sort of started following them. My first real season was the Andy Cole 30-goal season, which I think was their first year back in the Prem. Maybe it was their second year back in the Prem, but it was the old McEwen's Lager sponsor, sure. Thick black and white stripes with the black collar. It was Cole and Beardsley and that team, and it was just a super exciting team to watch. I actually started supporting Newcastle before I started playing football. I didn't start playing until I was 9, and I grew up in the London area. It was just outside London, so all of my mates were Man U fans because they were from London, or Chelsea fans, but Arsenal fans, lots of Manchester United fans. So there's a great rivalry that started. Yeah, great rivalry between United and Newcastle as I was a kid. And then naturally, sort of 95, 96 was the big breakthrough year for me. I still remember my first subscription to what used to be the Junior Magpie. This is a fanzine or a club sponsored, so not like True Faith. It was a club sponsored magazine. The Junior Magpie Club. My first copy of that was what's now a famous picture of the summer they signed Barton, Hislop, Ferdinand, and Ginola. And there's a famous sort of picture of the 4 of them that was on the front of the Junior Magpie. I don't have that copy. I wish I did. It's probably worth a few £1,000s now, but it'd be priceless to me. But that was my first real season, and obviously we ran as front runners for the whole season. Ended up finishing second, which was, I think we blew a 12-point lead, 13-point lead, which was difficult. But yeah, the Entertainers is what I grew up on, and then the Bobby Robson era was what I grew up on. I moved to the States, which I assume is where you're going with your next question.
Yeah. What about your first game before we get there?
So here's a funny thing. So
yeah,
I hadn't been to a game at St. James's until I had moved to America.
Okay.
So I used to go to away games, but sat in the home supporters, which was difficult. Yeah, for London games. So I went to some games at Stamford Bridge. I went to some games at the Valley where Charlton played when they were in the Premier League. I actually went to a game at Derby, funnily enough, which is not close to London. I had been to Newcastle as a kid and done the stadium tour, as I mentioned earlier, when I was 11 or 12, but it wasn't during the season, so I didn't get to go to a game. But remember back then, as is probably the future now, which we might talk about, you couldn't get a ticket. Right. When I was a kid, when the stadium was 36,000 and change before they expanded it, you couldn't get a ticket. I mean, it was season ticket holders, family members, that was it. You couldn't just, there wasn't the internet back then, I guess, but you couldn't just go online and buy tickets to a St. James's Park game. So you could only get tickets to games that Newcastle were playing away. So my first home game, I think, my mum will be watching this eventually. She'll remind me if I'm wrong, but my first home game was actually Wolves back in, oh gosh, not that long ago in hindsight, like 13, 14, 15. Pardew was manager. We had just sold, whenever we sold Carroll at the deadline, it was that season. It was after that. Because I remember I had Carroll 9 on my shirt and I got some stick from home fans. But I lived in America by then, so I traveled home and went to the game with my mum, bless her. And Newcastle won 3-1. Kevin Nolan scored, Shola scored, and I think Lovenkrands scored the third one. But it was a day trip, so we just took the train up. My mum lives in Reading, in the southwest of England. So we took the train up, took the train back. We didn't stay in town. So yeah, that was my first home game. I think that was 14 or 15. I'm probably dead wrong, but it feels like it was about 6 or 7 years ago when I went to that game. And we won. The only other game I've been to at St. James's was September of 19. That truly miserable 0-0 draw with Brighton. It was really horrific.
I remember that game, that 0-0 Brighton, and it's over the years of like expecting, match day today, we're gonna win 2-1, and it's like over the years. I remember, in fact, the same team last season in the pandemic, Shade and I were with Graham and a friend of ours over the road here, and Brighton stomped us 3-0.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at Shea just going, that is the worst performance I have ever seen from a Newcastle team. Just
empty stadium too, right? It was the second game of the season, wasn't it? We just beat West Ham.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
Well, the 0-0 one, but the 3-0, the 3-0 last season was towards the end of the season before we went on a run.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, that's right.
It was Brighton away. Sorry, Brighton.
Yeah.
And just one of those teams where you expect to beat. You expect us to go, and no disrespect to Brighton, because they're a good team and they've got a great manager. They've got a great manager. They've got a great club. But again, just over the years, you think we need to win this game, and like you said at the start, a few minutes ago, about we need wins. We need to be winning again. So,
well, hopefully that'll change. But
no, of course. But just hearing a story about, Andy Carroll, I think moved on. We talked about last episode, Shade, about, he was scoring goals like for fun with Newcastle 2009. 12, and then
You
obviously
couldn't do that in his second spell, eh?
Liverpool came in, and obviously with a big bid we couldn't really turn down. And Pardew, we finished 5th, so that was, I remember, being a pretty good season for us. But then obviously since then we just haven't really reinvested in the club, and the rest is history.
Yeah. All right. So that was pretty recent, and you were living in the States then. So we got to talk about that. So you're in London. How do you end up stateside?
Well, it's a funny story actually. So I went to what we call public school, which is actually private school in the UK. Very confusing system. Yeah. And I was good at football. Played a lot of football as a kid. I was a centre forward, left-footed. Speed, not power, but with good goal scorer. And I was recruited to come to college over here by two different schools: Columbia University in New York, nice. Ivy League, which I knew nothing about because why would I, as a teenager in the UK. And then this small school in Indiana, Division I, IU Purdue University affiliate school in Fort Wayne, Indiana, if you ever heard of that. It's crossroads of America. And my first choice was Columbia because it was in New York and I knew where that was on a map. But I only had like 2 weeks to prep for the SATs. So in the UK, we have no sort of standardized testing like that at that age. We have what's called GCSEs. I won't bore you with all this detail, but long story long, I only had like 2 weeks to prep for the SATs, and to get into an Ivy League school, I forget what you need, but you need a very high SAT score. And you know, school wasn't my strong point. Football was my strong point. So I didn't get into Columbia. I got very close, but I didn't get in. And I was really sad about it because I had decided that I was going to America. Like that was, you know, that was my story, that I was going to go to America. And then this school in Fort Wayne were like, well, we'll take you. Like, come along. No problem. You had a great SAT score. So, so I got to come over here, and I actually moved with a really good friend of mine who ended up being the best man in my wedding. Now lives in Denver, actually, and we're still close. He was from Bolton up by Manchester, and we competed against each other as teenagers, but it turned out we went to the same college over here. And we were roommates all the way through university, and had a great time playing D1 college soccer, just living the life. I joke that I sort of came here as a gap year. Like we were just like, let's go to America, let's have fun for a year, let's play some football, meet some people, have a good time, and then we'll come back and we'll figure out what we're going to do with the rest of our lives. Well, that was 17 years ago. So it's the longest gap year in history. You know, still here, met my beautiful wife. I've had 2 kids since then, and obviously we moved up to Minneapolis about 6 years ago, and that was work driven. We're both in financial services, so it's a great city on a corporate level, but it's also just it's a wonderful place to live and bring up kids, and you know, we're incredibly happy here. The winters are just horrible.
It's a little chilly. Gets a bit chilly in Minnesota. That's it.
Yeah, but they're horrible in Indiana too. So we just traded one horrible place for another horrible place.
I tell you what, in the Midwest, those storms, those winter storms, can, you know.
Yeah, but you know what? You get used to it. You adjust, and you sort of live the best you can. But the summers and the fall and the spring up here in Minneapolis are second to none. I mean, it's perfect weather right now, 70 degrees every day. It's a really great place to live, other than those 3 or 4 months in the winter where it's truly miserable. But it's a good trade.
Yeah, you know, I have a few friends that live there, and they say kind of the same thing. And
great footballing city. I mean, great MLS team, well-run franchise up here. Adrian Heath, manager of the Minnesota United. We were season ticket holders for their first season in their new stadium, beautiful arena they have up here, and a pretty good team as well. Last couple of years, you know, really solid run franchise. Adrian Heath's, good manager. So good footballing town.
That's great. I can't help but I mean, your story so far really resonates with me because, I ended up in Newcastle. I went out there to play rugby and go to grad school. Right. And I wasn't really too interested in going to grad school. I just wanted to play rugby and live in England. And so I was like, whatever, I hate working in LA. I'm going to go get a degree in England and have a bit of fun. And I obviously didn't stay there as long as you've stayed here, but I did stay there for quite a while longer. So before we kind of talk about your involvement with Newcastle and how you've come to be a board member on the trust, what were some of the learning curves for you being, having come from, because I know what it was like for me going to the UK from Southern California. What was it like for you having always lived in the UK and then coming to Indiana of all places and ending up in Minnesota? What was that experience like?
Yeah, well, and it's funny, we're having this conversation now. I mean, in August of next year, so 2022, I'll flip from having lived longer in America than I lived in England.
Wow.
So it's sort of it's weighing heavy on me right now that I'm about to flip to have lived, here longer than I lived in the UK. And I became a citizen, about 18 months ago, just, in time for the election mostly. But so it's an important time for me, knowing that I'm about to sort of cross over the divide to be more American than I am English, if you will. But the biggest thing for me at the time when I was 18 is just sort of getting used to the different culture. I mean, I traveled a lot as a kid. I was lucky to go on holidays and spend time in different areas. In fact, we used to go to Orlando, Florida a lot. My parents had a timeshare, which they probably regretted as soon as they bought it. But for us kids, it was the best thing ever, right? In the summer, we'd spend 2 or 3 weeks in Orlando and doing all the water parks and Disney and all of that stuff. So I just sort of thought, well, all of America must be like that. How different could it be? So when you fly from London, big city, to Chicago, another big city, and Fort Wayne is only a 30-minute flight from Chicago, I was like, well, how different can it be from Chicago? It's only 30 minutes from here. It's up into the clouds, down into the cornfields. It's a whole different world.
Oh yeah.
And everything is different. For all the words we use, all the terminology we use was different. Mm-hmm. I was lucky that I had a great support system. Not only were there other British players on the team, but the school really sort of embraced international students. So there was a great support system. And I was fortunate that my mum could come over and watch me play a number of times in my freshman year. So I didn't totally lose contact with home. I did lose contact with all of my old schoolmates. That's sort of a natural progression.
Yeah.
As you get older anyway. This is 2004, 2005. It was before sort of social media and everything that we have available to us now. But in terms of football, getting used to not having access to the football scores, not knowing what the results were, having to wait 2 or 3 days to know the Newcastle score was weird. And this was still Bobby Robson, Graham Souness, that sort of transition period for the club. I actually remember when Mike Ashley bought the club and finding that out and being like, who is it? What the hell's going on here? Where did this guy come from? No one had heard of him before he bought Newcastle United, and now everybody knows who he is. Right. Exactly. For better or worse. But yeah, it was a transition, but also from a playing standpoint, just to talk about football for a second, in England, you don't normally play more than maybe 1 or 2 years above your age. Even if you're a really good young footballer, if you're 12, 13, 14, you don't play more than one age group up very often. I mean, maybe some really unique situations you do. But when you come to America as a freshman in college, and this is your English viewers won't probably understand that. You're immediately playing against people that are 3 and 4 years older than you, right? So juniors, seniors, redshirt seniors. And I remember going to my first practice, my first training session as an 18-year-old, and I was playing with kids that were 22, in some cases 23, that had redshirted, playing an extra year. I was like, what the hell? I mean, these are men. It felt like boys playing with men. So that was a really interesting transition for me. But I had a great time. Like I said, I was very fortunate that I had a good support system. But it really took me probably 6 or 8 months to realize that like this was a real thing that was happening. Like I was really in college, having to go to class, having to do 12 credit hours while traveling during season. We'd go to Buffalo, we'd go to Michigan, we'd go North and South Dakota, we'd be Florida, we'd be all over the country, but I still had to study and like do school because part of my scholarship relied on getting grades. Like this whole idea was sort of foreign to me, but I've been incredibly lucky over the course of the 17 years, and thankfully my wife kept me on the straight and narrow with school. She was extremely good scholastically, and she played as well. I mean, she was a full ride athlete as well on the women's soccer team, so that's how we met. She actually went to Tampa for her freshman year. She's a year older than me, and then transferred back to Indiana, where she's from. So thankfully she kept me in school and kept me on the football pitch as well.
That's awesome. That's such a, I mean, that it's cool to hear that side of things. Like for me, when I went over to the UK, it was almost the in terms of sport, right? It was almost a polar opposite. I was in grad school already, so I was a bit older, right? And so I was 24, 25. I turned 25 when I got there, and I was playing on the rugby team with all of these like undergrads, right? Freshers through year 4, and I, rugby's a lot bigger here now, but especially then rugby was not big. And I got into rugby very late in life, and, not to too much, got all right at it. But when I got out there, I was like, why are the 18-year-old kids so much smarter at this game than me? That is the biggest handicap ever. They were like, not only were they quick and all of that and athletic and stuff like that, and you can get that, but their intelligence of the game was just, it surpassed anyone I had played with in my entire career in the States, even on the men's league that I had played with before I moved out there. And so like I was just getting schooled by these kids all the time. But that's just, for me personally, it's just funny to hear that other side of it. So then how did you come to get involved in everything you do now with the Trust and Newcastle United? So here, which I would imagine would have been a lot is a lot harder, right? I mean, obviously me and Rich know that living out here as well. But yeah. So how did that all kind of come to be?
Yeah. So, back it was during the pandemic, right? So it was during sort of lockdown when I was elected to the board, and really, it was just I needed a way, I needed an outlet for my sort of passion and energy towards the club, and sort of being a fan and feeling very isolated at the time. I felt like I needed a community where I could sort of drive my enthusiasm and passion for the club. So I knew a couple of the board members from some work that I'd done for True Faith and for other organizations, just through social media, really. And I just put my name forward, and I had some support in the area from some outlets that I had, again, social media wise. And you know what? I just found that the more I talked to people about putting positive energy towards the club, the more sort of responsive people were. And I really enjoyed talking to people. I talked to tons of voters, tons of people of the Trust, and just sort of gained support that way. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if being sort of the only international or the first international board member sort of had an impact on the way people voted. But yeah, it's an incredible privilege to be part of the Trust. It's a 3-year term, so I'm a little over a year into that 3 years. But there's no doubt I was motivated at the time by the idea that the club might be taken over. This, think back to last October, last summer, it felt like the takeover was going to happen then. So there's no doubt that I was motivated then to be part of the trust that might have a real positive impact in the short term on fans' experience with the club. But, what I've found with being part of the trust is that even from here, even being based in the US, I've been able to help fans in the UK, in the Northeast region, with issues with the club. And ultimately, that's what the trust is, right? It's an amplifier for our members' voice when it comes to its relationship with our club. And as dark as that has felt over the last few years with the Ashley era, it is incredibly motivating to feel that experience for people may change. I mean, there are no real perks to being a trust member. It's not like we get access to things that regular fans don't get access to necessarily. But what we do get is the opportunity to advocate on their behalf, and that's something that I take seriously. Whether you're an international member of the trust or whether you're a local member of the trust. So yeah, it's a great privilege and something I love doing.
That's awesome. And just from on a personal level, I was not a trust member before I went into that meeting where you and I first met, when you were telling us about what the plans were for the pledge and everything like that. And really the fact that you were US based and you were trying to reach out to this area of the world where I felt so isolated in so many, for so many years being out here and being a Newcastle fan. It really resonated with me that you were US based and you were reaching out, you put out that tweet to, all my US supporters coming into this Zoom meeting and everything like that. And I didn't really know what was going on, and I knew about the trust, but, personally part of me felt like I didn't really have any, not reason, but more like, well, they're not going to want me. And why would I be a member? I'm just over here in California. Yeah. And then when we had that meeting, I remember I signed up that week, and so that for me, that was huge, was seeing a presence in the States. And that's all I've ever wanted. I tell everyone on social media, if I can't, be in Newcastle, I want to bring as much of it to me as I possibly can. And that's why it resonated with me so much. And so that's just awesome to kind of hear how you got involved. But do you think that, and maybe it's early days for this as well, is what do you think that the kind of future is for fans in the US now? Because obviously we're all here.
Well, there's a number of things, number of plans that the trust have, semi-speared by myself, but also other members of the trust board that really want to sort of leverage our international support. So, we've done events in the past, like the one you're talking about, trying to get members together. Frankly, I think we're all probably more motivated by a successful club, right? There's no doubt that when the football is better on the pitch, we are more motivated as fans and more positive as fans. So yeah, I would love to do more things like that. And, don't forget, not only do we have great supporters over here in the US, but there are a number of former players that are now based over here, Warren Barton being the most obvious example, but there are others as well. So yeah, it's a community that goes well beyond just the Northeast. I mean, I do sometimes feel like it is easy, particularly in the social media world where the earth is flat, to forget that Newcastle is a club way beyond Newcastle and the area of the Northeast. I mean, not just in the UK, but we have thousands of supporters in Scandinavia and Central Europe, Western Europe, and obviously over here. I mean, when we launched the pledge, we had almost an equal number of pledges from the rest of the world as we did from the Northeast, and that's impactful. I mean, that makes a big difference. Yeah,
that's huge.
So we'll look to continue to expand that. And yeah, I think the club under new ownership would be short-sighted if they didn't try and leverage the international brand that is Newcastle. I mean, I remember even under Pardew, when Newcastle came to the States, I think they played in Kansas City, they played in Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio, and I forget, they played somewhere else as well. I went to the game in Columbus. This is when I lived in Indiana. It was only a 3-hour drive or so to get to Columbus. I think we had 2,000 fans in the away end at Columbus for a friendly. And it was actually, it was against the Columbus B team because they were mid-season. So they didn't have most of their first team wasn't even playing. They had a man sent off after about 20 minutes, which sort of ruined the game because it came, it wasn't very competitive after that. But it was great. We met in a pub beforehand, a few hundred supporters. I took some friends from Fort Wayne and just blew their mind that, this relatively small club in England at the time could find a way to have 2,500 supporters, both American and some folks obviously came from the UK as well. So I would love Newcastle to come on tour to America again. Probably be a whole different experience under this new ownership. But, in the short term, anything our community over here can do to connect itself closer together would be so impactful for all of us, because you made the comment earlier, sometimes it is like being on an island, right? Even if you've got local supporters like you obviously do with the fan club out there, sometimes it feels very lonely and difficult, and you turn to social media, which is like the worst thing to do, right? You're much better off turning to one another than social media, which can be a dark, dark place, particularly after a loss. So yeah, I mean, anything that we can do to knit our community in the States closer together, I am all for, which is why I was so excited when I saw that GallowgateShots was launching the United States. I think it's just tremendous, and I'm so happy and proud for you guys to be representing our fan base in America.
Thanks. We really appreciate you saying that, and I mean that is the goal. I mean, that's the goal for this, and GallowgateShots saw that opportunity, and I know me and Rich are really grateful that they wanted us to do it, and really the overall goal for this podcast is to make a pun, to be the United State of Newcastle in the United States, right? And bring our community as tight knit as we possibly can, especially going into this new era, which we didn't anticipate happening when we started this. We just wanted to unite more US based Newcastle supporters and make them feel like not only like they have a voice, but also that feel like that they're represented and seen and everything like that. And so it means a lot to me personally to hear you say that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
no, huge, Adam. I mean, it's such an honor to represent our team on the West Coast, but also on the American side. I just feel the globalization of the club is just going to transform over the next few years. Yeah. And even last night in the pub, because Shade and I were just like lighting up North Park here in San Diego, like shouting and screaming, and we had like some random people, saw our shirts, and they were like, "Hey, you guys got bought today, didn't you?" We're like, "Well, you know what I mean?" And then we go for a run club at a local brewery every Thursday night, and obviously Shade and I are just couldn't stop talking about the takeover. And randomly, these two guys next to us, American guys, one was from Mexico, one was from North Carolina, both from different backgrounds. We were like, "Oh yeah, our clubs have been bought out," and they were like, "Oh yeah, who's that?" And we said, "Oh, Newcastle United," and they said, "Oh, we're Newcastle fans."
Great.
You want to see what, as you mentioned, like in America, sometimes it can be quite lonely.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say people are maybe a bit embarrassed. Maybe sometimes they can be to say, "Hey, we like Newcastle," but now it's they're going to come out the woodwork, and we're going to be recruiting. And I was like, my clients, I was like, "Do you have a football team?" He was like, "No, he's a big Philadelphia Eagles fan." And I was like, "Right, you like a pint? Right, come down." Your recruitment, that's it. Yeah. So the following is we're gonna get some pictures going the next weekend for sure.
That's great.
Yeah, I think it was definitely nice to, for lack of better words, be obnoxious Geordies yesterday. Yeah. Because we were at our football pub, right? and that, you know, other supporters, like that's just their local too, because it is a neutral bar. And you know, and so some of them were showing up just to have a Friday afternoon pint, right? And none of them could handle us yesterday. None of them wanted to deal with us yesterday, and rightfully so, you know.
Yes, yesterday was a whirlwind. For me, it started at 3 a.m. and there was some poetic justice to it, actually, because, you know, I work from home most of the time now. I'm sitting in my office right now in the work I do, but after like 18 months of a hybrid model, having a lot of flexibility about where I do my work, yesterday afternoon I had to go down to the office to be in some meetings. And of course, that's exactly when this whole thing was happening. So I actually pulled into my company parking lot, and I had been listening to Sky Sports News on Sling while I was driving down to the office, about 25 minutes. And I was like, I swear they're going to announce this like right as I get into the office. And sure enough, I pulled into my parking spot, and they go back to Keith Downey on Sky Sports News. And you can see the emotion on his face, right? You can literally see it coming out of him. He's like, yeah, I've got the statement from the Premier League right here. The takeover is complete. And I saw that yellow banner come across the screen, and I just burst into tears in the parking lot.
Like, I'm getting teary-eyed right now. Just
all the emotion. You know, it reminds me. I was talking to my mum today. It's a bit of a digression, but it felt like when, you know, the transfer fee had been agreed between two clubs, right? But there's that time where personal terms, the medical, he's got to fly up in Ashley's helicopter because they always did that for some reason. Like that period of time where you knew this is going to happen unless something goes completely wrong. It felt like that build all morning and into lunchtime here in Central Time. But like until the final word was said, I was like, something could go wrong with this. And I just need to see it flash across the screen. And it, like I said, pulled into the office. Luckily, I wasn't on the highway because I probably would have derailed completely. But I got into my parking spot, threw my headphones in, and there's Keith Downey announcing it. I just burst into tears. Luckily, empty parking lot because almost everybody still works from home. But I would have been so embarrassed had someone seen me at the time. I was just crying in tears in my suit, ready to go into the office. But happy days, happy days.
Yeah.
What a crazy emotion to go in.
Yeah, you know? I'll never forget that. Right, I'll never forget. Text my mum, text my wife. I'll never forget that moment. Huge for everybody.
It's huge day.
Oh, it was just amazing. Like I called off work yesterday and today because I was like, I even told Rich, I'm like, it's happening, mate. I've called off work. And it got announced. So it was around 9 a.m. our time or 9:30 a.m. our time. And the announcement, like my social media blew up. Everyone was messaging me and stuff like that. And then Simon, who is the founder of Toon Army San Diego, messaged me and he's like, mate, I took today off too. He's like, I'm going straight to the pub. You in? And I was like, I'll be there in 10 minutes, you know? And then I called Rich and I was like, Rich, we're going to the pub, mate. Meet Simon there. Like it's done.
Yeah.
You know? And
the 10-minute warning. The 10-minute warning.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, that's all you got. And then
we've never seen Simon so happy. We've never seen
Simon on the Guinness. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
What a moment.
Totally. And you know, I'm really grateful that that's happened. Of course, I know we all are. But I'm grateful that we've gotten to kind of get a fresh reaction to it from you. You know, less than 24 hours after the announcement, or about 24 hours after the announcement and stuff like that. And it was really, really great to hear your story and talk takeover and talk about the trust and just kind of hear how you came to be the person that you are. And we're really, really grateful to have you as our first official guest on this new the United States, brought to you by GallowgateShots. Before we are going to have to jump and go start talking to Toon Army Denver. But before we go, do you have any closing remarks? Anything you'd like to say and before we jump?
Well, just that it's been a privilege, guys. I mean, really, I'm so happy that we were able to put this together. You know, it's one thing talking through social media to each other through DMs and whatever else, but it's been a privilege to get to know you guys. I'm incredibly happy that we had this conversation. versus the conversation we probably would have had when we first started talking about doing this call. So just I'm incredibly happy. I think that the next few days will be really important for our football club, and the next few months will be important as well. But yeah, it's a huge privilege. Thank you to GallowgateShots for putting this thing together, and obviously thank you to you guys for putting yourselves out there and doing this. I think it's really, really important for our community in the United States, and I'm super excited to watch you guys grow over the coming weeks and months.
Sure.
Well, we really appreciate you saying that. Rich, you got anything before we let Adam go? And
no, it's just an honor. We'll keep spreading the brand. I mean, I'm going up to Portland, Oregon in a few weeks, so we're going to keep spreading the message.
Great.
And we'll no doubt link up with our Portland fan base as well. So, and just before we go, I mean, we all have links to each other. I mean, Minnesota was the first state I visited when I first came here 12 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
15 years ago. So you said New York. You were like, oh yeah, you want to go Columbus because you knew that was on the map. I was in a summer camp as a counselor, and it was like, you are going to go to Camp Mishawaka in Minnesota. And I was like, where the hell is that? It's like Grand Rapids, Minnesota. It's near Duluth. It's just like
that's fantastic.
In Lake Pokegama. It's unbelievable. But you're right. The summers there are beautiful. Fell in love with this great country, and the sporting development and the sporting following that Americans love over here. We can only do our best to promote our club and let them fall in love with our wonderful club and our football on our game.
Love it. All right. Well, thanks so much, Adam. Coming up next is Toon Army Denver out of Colorado, and we're really excited to feature another supporters group and hear their story. So stay tuned for that. And thanks again, Adam. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Cheers, mate. All right. As we mentioned before, we're here with Josh Lumpkin and Tony Gentile from Toon Army Denver, a.k.a. the Mile High Magpies out of Colorado. Guys, welcome to the United States. I'm Shade. This is Rich.
I'm Rich. Welcome.
Nice. What's up?
First off, before we even get started, just wanted to thank you guys for coming on. This is our first episode with our official format going forward. So you're the first US-based supporters group that we're featuring. And, so that's cool. And we're really stoked on it. And, I'm pretty talkative with the Toon Army Denver Twitter on Twitter, Twitter account on Twitter and stuff like that. So it's great to actually put faces to some. I mean, I've seen pictures of you guys online and stuff like that, but it's cool to actually interact with you guys, in live time and also on, what is the greatest week ever if you're a Newcastle fan, especially in the modern day of football. So before we, we're still celebrating. I mean, it still feels like Thursday to me because I haven't stopped, and so it's all a blur. I'm sure Rich can agree.
Oh my God, it's been a whirlwind of emotions. It's great to see so many faces with rocking so many different shirts.
Yeah.
Josh, you've got this great flag in the back, very creative. You've got that's one of my favorite shirts actually. When it was like a blue collar, that was when Duncan Ferguson and Shearer and Dyer were playing. Robson was starting to get going. So
I love it because it incorporates every element of so many Newcastle shirts. It's got the color, it's got the blue trim, it's got the Newcastle Brown Ale shirt sponsor. So,
that's it, Brown Ale.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's a beautiful one. That's actually one that I don't own, believe it or not. Which means I'll probably own it soon now.
Even got the long sleeves, so
yeah. Yeah, that's sick. I mean, those are a lot harder to come. I have a couple Northern Rock long sleeves that I'm pretty pleased with because the older ones, finding a long sleeve, especially in good condition and everything, is just very, very difficult.
Most of my shirts come from eBay. I'm kind of a shirt fiend. As I alluded to earlier, I think I got 38 or 40 or something. I can literally wear a different one every match if I wanted to.
Man after my own heart. That's awesome. We're gonna have to maybe do something where we do something separate or something on social media where we talk just strictly kits. Because I mean, I think anyone that follows me knows that I blow all my money on kits. All my extra money anyways, right? Cool. So, before we kind of talk about the Mile High Magpies and everything that you guys do in Denver, I think that we should at least acknowledge, the takeover that happened this week, because we just had Adam Beckett on from Newcastle United Supporters Trust, and we were talking a lot about it. But obviously, I'd like to hear kind of what this week was for both of you and for Denver, and how you guys are feeling. It's starting to actually, it's starting to be digestible now that we've had a few days to be hungover and really ruminate in the fact that we're the richest club in the world, which still feels weird to say.
There it is.
So tell me your thoughts. What are you thinking? How you feeling?
You go, Josh.
So, I mean, I was super excited, although I'm at the same time, I think with a lot of folks, there is that concern, obviously, around the human rights and whatnot. So I'm basically have always stood by the idea of just hopeful and optimistic. My whole thing is, if Newcastle can be even just the tiniest part of any type of change or liberation or regime, transfer of power, anything like that, I want to be a part of that. And that's part of the reason why I'm very optimistic, in the sense that, like, I'm hoping that we have, with the greatest fan base, with us having the greatest fan base, in my opinion, in the world, that love extends over to our financiers and our brethren in state and the folks that are there, and they'll be able to sort of start, maybe this could be the start of, the Toon Army sort of infiltrating, that culture and bringing more people under the umbrella. And I know that's kind of like this lofty sort of like pie in the sky ideal, but that's part of the reason why I'm kind of sticking with this change and why I feel like it's important. I've always felt, very firm on the idea of having an inclusive fan base. And this, to me, is just another extension of that. So I'm not, as much as, there are those human rights concerns, I'm hoping this is going to be a very positive thing that can bring about change. And even if we're just a small part of that, I feel like we really need to take that opportunity. Am I excited to win trophies? Absolutely. Am I excited to finally have backing? Absolutely. It didn't really hit me until after we were partying and we're on the drive home, and I'm like, oh my God, this is really happening. And my mind just really started to wander. But I know there are a few people out there in doubt. I know a couple of members who pretty much given up the Toon, and we respect that decision. But at the same time, you could be missing out on something that could be just an amazing opportunity for Newcastle fans everywhere to really be a part of.
So, yeah, I mean, I totally, you're talking to an echo chamber. I think that we're all in agreement there. So you have some fans that have decided to just kind of walk away because of
just two in our group, just two from what I know of. And again, we respect their decision, but of
course,
they do what they got to do. We totally get it. So
yeah.
It was
that's a shame, but I respect everybody's decisions and stuff.
Exactly.
I mean, it was kind of bleak in the especially in the last 2 or 3 years when, Mike Ashley just was not putting in a dime. You know what I mean? Just like, we might get this player or this player, but Rafa was forced to sell his best players.
Oh yeah.
And then even you could just see the players just dropping tools, just giving up on a day. They go a goal down, or if they get a goal, they're celebrating too much if they get a goal, and they go, and then the game is lost. And then if they go on a away day, they just get countless results that they should be competing. Just giving up basically. So when the fans see that, then obviously year after year after year, it just got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So
and that I was going to say is also for me, like you talk about that investment, not to get on a side topic here, but I think that for me and for a lot of Newcastle fans, where it's like, you look at what Pardew did in 11 and 12, where it's like we finally make Europa, no investment. We had at one point 11 starters out to injury, and it was just so obvious at that point that Mike Ashley did not care. And then, of course, the Rafa leaving, that one hurt me a lot. And that was when I was just like incredibly cynical about the whole thing. But, I've kind of stuck with it, and I'm glad I did. And, it's part of the reason why, I just try to disassociate myself, as much from the Ashley era as I could. I've never spent a lot of money through the club store. It's my own. We don't really have a lot by way of boycotting, aside from a financial boycott. And so that was pretty much what I continued to do, because I love the club and I didn't like how it was being run.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And, I was telling Adam, who was just on a minute ago, like, I only know the Ashley era. I know that there's a lot of younger fans that only know the Ashley era and everything like that. And obviously, like, I know about prior Ashley through reading and stuff like that, but not anything that I experienced personally. And it was bleak. And I think that we were on, I'm Newcastle till I die. And I think that, I'm speaking for all of us when I say that and everything. So it's like, I could never, ever give up on this club no matter what. Obviously I'm well chuffed about what's going on, but I do think that we were in a predicament where we could really, if Ashley had stayed any longer, the damage wouldn't have been able to be reversible, right? Like it's been bad. And don't get me wrong. I'm not spouting any kind of positivity towards Ashley other than the fact that we have no debt right now. And now our lovely new owners can pump as much money as, not as much money as they want, but quite a bit of money into us in January. Which is great. But other than that, I have no good things to say about him really. But I will say that the damage that he has done seems pretty reversible, especially considering who now owns us, right? And I think that that's exciting for what people used to know and what people used to experience, but also for what these younger fans have been dreaming of, right? Or not even just the younger fans, what we've been dreaming of. It's not just reclaiming some of our heritage, right, as Newcastle United supporters, but it's also chasing some of those wild dreams that we've all had, right? We've all had. How could you not if it's your club, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree with you there. Tony, how you feeling?
Feeling great. I was gonna say, to start off the week, Sunday, after Sunday's match, usually I hang around and talk to Josh, and I was just so mad I paid my check and I just left after Sunday's Wolves game. And Wednesday when I saw him, or Thursday, I don't even remember now, I was just like, I'm sorry for just bouncing on Sunday on you. I just was so mad. I was just like, it was just terrible. And then as the rumors started to happen Tuesday and then Wednesday, when it was like this, wait, what? No, this isn't really happening. And then it was like, this is really happening.
Right.
I just can't believe it. I'm more happy for my friend that I met from Newcastle, how this all started.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, he stopped his season ticket. And for them, that's like their weekend. That's what they work to spend their hard-earned money on. And for him, I'm more happy. I'm obviously happy for us, but for the people there, I wish I was there Thursday to be outside St. James's Park. I couldn't. I was excited just watching videos on my Twitter. I even messaged Josh. I was like, okay, if this goes through, message me. And then I was already on Twitter, so I was just so excited, and that's all I've been talking about pretty much. And my girlfriend's sick of hearing it. She's like, yes, I know you're happy. So I was talking about dinner last night. I just I've been explaining to people. I talked about it at golf this morning. I'm like, yeah, we're just now we're the top dogs.
Yeah.
So it's insane. I still can't believe it's real. So now I'm texting people about who we can sign possibly, and I want Conte because he was the Italian national team manager, and it's weird. It's really weird to talk about those I don't even know concepts. Stavely wants to do so many things. It's just really, really strange to hear that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's bizarre. Just even her quote about how she's like, how are we expected to attract world-class players if we don't have a world-class training facility? And that's something, it's easy to get caught up in the manager and the players and stuff like that. But, that's something that we've just desperately needed. Not only, to attract better players and stuff like that, but mostly to just take care of the players that we have,
right. And
give them the very best that they deserve. Right. And, Yeah, so it is surreal. Like I think I put on Twitter, I was like, is this what they all felt like when they beat the Matrix and got out? Like I don't, like I don't know this world. Like I've never seen with these eyes before, right?
Like I've just been happy the past couple of years just to survive. And I remember when I was with the Toon Army Chicago group when I was living back home, us beating West Ham, like that was like winning the Premier League just to stay in, and Jonas like just ripping his shirt off, like that was like a thing. And then that's how I felt Thursday. I wasn't even watching a game; I was at work.
Yeah. I mean, that was always the dream, though. That was always the dream. Like building this world-class club. I'm talking about back probably, a little bit of Kevin Keegan, but mainly when Bobby Robson was there.
Oh yeah.
With Shepherd, and there was always the dream. They always had this idea of like get the team playing, but we're going to need more investment. We're going to need more investment. That was the idea behind Mike. Actually, maybe that was their thinking, because he had like billions of pounds and a good backing to take the club forward. But obviously, just ran it into the ground. So, so the dream's always been there to get the best local talent, and that's what I love about her talking about Amanda Staveley talking about, getting kids to play football again in the streets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So going out to, get the scouting team out to the best clubs in the area to recruit the best talent.
Keeping Michael Carrick, keeping Fraser Forrester, those
all of those things. But I used to play against. So I'm from just a little outside Newcastle, and I used to play against Shola Amiobi. I used to play against all these players, Ryan Taylor's, because. And Alan Shearer was Cramlington Juniors. Obviously, he's 20 years, about 15 years older than me. But Cramlington Juniors is the place where Shearer learned his trade. But then obviously got Newcastle like, no, we don't want him, and then went to Southampton. So when he was like 16 years old, So, but those feeder teams around the northeast, it's imperative. You get, it's so important that these scouts get back out there.
Totally, and and Rich just casually telling all our listeners how much cooler he is than I am. Here's my appreciation.
No, I mean, look, the thing is,
it's cool. I talk too much. He's cooler than me. It's all good. That's how we operate. That's how we do this show.
The thing is, when you grow up around Newcastle, it's each high school. It's like, do you want to, you're bred football. You're bred football through and through, and it's like you're pushed to be the best. I remember being coached by Simon Smith, who's still the goalkeeping coach. The head goalkeeping coach of Newcastle today is Simon Smith. He's been there since Ruud Gullit. It's Bobby Robson and all these managers. He's seen it all.
Yeah.
And fantastic. And this backroom staff could do a better job than our current manager. So we don't understand. Like we've got some experienced talent. And just like the scenes of the spell has been broken of Mike Ashley, like Shane and I was saying just before, and all the team was like, oh right, we can do this now, we can do this again, we can finally breathe again. So
yeah.
Even seeing the social media pictures of the team in training yesterday was just, they're like, what happened to these guys? Like they're all smiling, they're all like actually happy to be there.
Right. We were talking about that with Adam, just like the social media person or manager, whoever's running these accounts, like it's like he's been unshackled.
Oh, got a raise. They're like, here.
Yeah. And so it's just really funny to see. I'm gonna lose my mind if Newcastle United ever retweet me, because they've never ever really done that before, right? It's like it's just crazy that they're being that active. But it is great. It's a new dawn. It's exciting and stuff like that. And obviously we could sit here and speculate and celebrate and talk this. I mean, I could talk about it all day. Like Tony said, I've been, my roommate's a Chelsea supporter, and I've just been in his face the whole day because I'm like, Chelsea, who's that? And like, and
his favorite team. So
exactly. And and then the guy that lives across the street, he comes over and hangs out. He's a football supporter as well. He supports Man United, and he'd been working away for the past 2 days, not checking his phone. He had no idea. And so that just gave me another opportunity to be as obnoxious as I possibly could about everything that has happened to our club this week. But that's not why you guys are here. We did have to talk a little bit about that, but we really want to know more about Toon Army Denver. But before we start specifically with the Mile High Magpies, and forgive me because I'll go back and forth with you guys' names.
That's okay.
Tony and Jack.
Now, I'd like to hear how both of you guys came to support our lovely club. Maybe we could get started with you, Josh, and then bring it over to Tony.
Yeah, so I kind of come from that old school era, so to speak. So I have always been like a huge music head, and so for me, it's always been like a lot of alternative music and listening to a lot of music that came out of the UK, especially in the late 80s and early 90s, to date myself. And so it was around that time when, it was the Entertainers. They were challenging for the title. So all we got here in the United States was Man U, Man U, Man U. And even prior to Becca marrying Posh Spice, like it was the height of Britpop. It was a perfect storm. So that's all you ever saw. So for me, it was the same deal. It was like, who's the alternative? It's Newcastle. Newcastle's the alternative. That's who I want to support. And so, it was a lot of like ESPN highlights I remember at the time, and watching Sports Center just so I can kind of get a glimpse of my club. And that's kind of what really got me into it and solidified it. Later then, I traveled to Europe in 2002. And of course, it was during the World Cup, and I had a blast. Like, it seemed like whatever country I was in was winning. So it was like a constant party. So, so when I got back, and I remember even when I was in England and watching some of those matches, and even just following some of the Argentina matches, and following Jonas and following Colaccini and following them later into Newcastle, I just found more and more, even from the World Cup, a lot of those players coming over to Newcastle. So again, it just furthered my involvement with the club. And then when I really got serious was probably about like 10 or 15 years ago. It's when I really started watching, because then it was like Fox Soccer was in the United States. And we had a bar here in Denver. And then they opened a second bar because the bar was so small, it couldn't hold everybody. That bar ended up closing, and that was the one where pretty much like all the groups met. And for a while I was going down and watching like my friend who was a Liverpool fan, but I would stay and watch Newcastle, and I literally watched every game in 2011 and 2012. Like, I would literally schedule all of my paid time off so I'd go watch the games midweek even.
I know that life.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, it was great because I was like, oh wow, it's great. It's like the Entertainers. Like, I never left. It was like, there wasn't this crappy gap, between when we finished 5th under Pardew and like in 2002 with Robson and all that. Even from there. So I just felt like, oh, this is, I kind of missed out on that 8-year gap, because of course, when the club was relegated, I mean, they're non-existent to U.S. fans. Like,
I know.
At least at the time, it was non-existent. And so it was when we beat Manchester United 3-0 under Pardew, it was the only time I saw the Newcastle fans outnumber the Man U fans. And that's when I said, I got to form this group. And that's when I came up with Mile High Magpies, and then had a lot of help. That was sort of like the beginning where I started introducing myself around and telling people, hey, come back down, and forming a group. And then I formalized it later when a woman, Geordie, Victoria Janik, she was living in New York City at the time, and helped design this flag, as well as many other Toon Army American, groups' flags. And she was in New York, and she's a graphic artist, so she developed the flag and all of that. And so she was like, I'll help you. So I think my first 5 members of Toon Army Denver lived in New York City. So it was like people from Toon Army New York, like helping and pushing it and rolling it out. And, again, I grew. And we have, believe it or not, like a really solid fan base here in Denver. And I know it's kind of like leading into sort of some of the other questions I know you're asking, but it's sometimes tough to get us all together. But that's always been the story of my Newcastle journey of, what was the alternative? Who were these giant killers? Who were kind of the underdogs? So it's kind of interesting to see that shift now that we're probably going to be a top 6 club and dominant, which is great.
It feels weird to hear Ed say, but
yeah, that we're now kind of mainstream. But if anybody recalls, I sent a tweet because the PL and USA asked, who's your Premier League hero? And I split, a photo between, Amanda Stavely and of course Kevin Keegan. And I said, one showed us our potential, and the other is going to help us actualize it. And I think that's really
gave me
important.
goosebumps, mate. That gave me goosebumps.
And that's the thing. It's Keegan showed the world what we were worth. And credit to Mike Ashley by keeping us sound financially, to making us a viable club, to purchase. I mean, that's the one positive thing he did. I'm not a total Mike Ashley hater, but I'm like a 98% Mike Ashley hater.
Yeah.
Like, I recognize the 2% positive things that he has done. And that obviously was one of them.
Definitely.
A lot of the things, though, are a fantastic fan base. I think we have, I'm going to be biased and say we have the best fans in the world, right?
Absolutely.
I think we all agree.
Even when you watch YouTube videos and, they'll interview opposing fans, they all say the same thing. They always say what a great time they have when they come to St. James Park, how great our fans are. And that is what I have encountered anywhere I've ever traveled, or even meeting other folks from, different Toon Army groups. We're all like super friendly. We're all just very excited and very happy to get to know one another. And that could be maybe compared to maybe the scarcity of Newcastle fans compared to, say, other clubs, especially top 6 clubs. But I think it's beyond that when you start seeing that, as you mentioned, in the UK as well.
Yeah, I mean, I say it all the time because I'm just such a Geordie fan, right? In general, not just Newcastle, but there's no one more genuine than a Geordie, in my opinion. That it wasn't just football that made me fall in love with that city. It was the people, and even outside of the context of Newcastle United and being a supporter and everything like that. They're the best people I've ever met, and stuff. But that's really, really cool, man. That's awesome. I want to give Tony some time to kind of tell us his story. I know that he was featured on Premier League Fans USA last season, so it's really funny for me because I remember seeing that spread on you and being like, 1, jealous, and then 2, being like, oh, there's more of us, because it's like prior to I think I just started Twitter when I saw that and everything. So it's cool to have you on the show and actually talk to you in virtual person.
My days is an Instagram
for people that sorry?
My days is an Instagram model.
Yeah, I just remember all the beautiful mountainscape landscape photos in the background, and I think you had one photo in that jersey as well. Yeah. See, if it's Newcastle, I'll remember. But tell us kind of how you became a fan and how you linked up with Denver, because I know you're not originally from there. You're from Chicago, right?
Yeah, I've bounced around. So my journey started in Southern Illinois, where I went to school, and there was my friend Dave. He's from Consett, if you know where that is.
Yep.
And so first semester, first week, my friend and I would always play FIFA, the video game series, and friend lived in international housing, and he brings Dave over, and he's wearing, I think, Rich's top, and we're like, oh, we know who that is, and and we're like, where are you from? He goes, oh, I'm from Newcastle. And we're like, oh, wow, that's cool. I've seen Goal, I know Goal, and I knew Davide Santone because I knew all the Italian players in the Premier League, so that was my extent. Goal and Davide Santone. That was pretty much it. And so then he started to hang out with us all the time, and we would go to a bar in St. Louis, and that's kind of how it all started. And then my best friend from school went and visited him in the spring of 2013 and saw us play Arsenal. And then I went and visited him, and I did Blackburn away in the championship and Nottingham Forest at home. So any plastics, I'm like, well, I did an away day at Blackburn, so that's my dedication. So
that's your I was there before tweet.
Yeah, that's I saw somebody say that. Yeah. I was like, I did Blackburn away, and but it was I mean, the earliest I remember I've gotten up now for it is 5:30 when we played Sunderland on Boxing Day.
Yeah,
a while ago. So it's been 9 years since I've been following Newcastle, and my mom and dad are always like, "Is it what United? What's the team called again?" And when I wear the black and white striped shirt, people are always like, "Is that Foot Locker?" I'm like, no, I don't want Foot Locker.
Yeah. Are you a referee?
Yeah. A lot. Yeah,
it's always the question I get. So and tag on to you, Shade. The people in Newcastle remind me of people from the Midwest, just very warm and welcoming. And staying with my friend and just going around the city was a great experience. So whenever I meet someone who's a fan of another Premier League team, I just like, oh, I just give them a big hard time. So now I can really give them a hard time. So,
I know.
Oh yeah, it's about stuff.
It's I've planned most of my life around watching matches, unless I really can't watch it with people or like on a computer or at home. So my license plate is NUFC 9.
Nice.
My phone case is Shearer. It's a lot of things in my life are Newcastle related, so it's pretty funny. And then when we watched the Euro 2020 final, I was cheering for Italy. And then all the Geordies that we have here were watching, and so like I was happy that England made it, but I was also really happy they lost. So that was another weird moment.
That was weird. It was like, because we go to a really we go to a neutrals bar, right? And we'll talk about your guys' bar in a bit too. But yeah, we go to a neutrals bar, so it's a great space because we're taken care of, no different than any other supporters group that's there, and we love the guy that runs it. But like for all the Euros, we were all friends, right? And then like I remember when the Euros ended, we were like, oh, I guess we all go back to hating each other now, because like I was hanging out with Villa fans, I was hanging out with Tottenham fans. It didn't matter for that tournament, and now I can't stand any of them again, right? No, they're good, they're fine, they're San Diego people, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. And then in St. Louis, where I was, there was like one central bar where a lot of other clubs would go, and in Florida, I was like kind of outnumbered, and Chicago, we had a good support group. So, and when I knew I was moving out here, I reached out to Josh, and I think I've maybe only missed like 5 or 6 games with him. So,
when was that?
I moved here in November of 19.
Okay, so you've been there a couple years.
Yeah.
That's cool. You've kind of like I kind of move around a lot too. So like I'm very much a nomad in a lot of ways and everything. But it's cool that you've gotten to experience kind of Newcastle, across different aspects of America, which is something that I've not done. I've only really kind of been in California, Toronto, or Newcastle.
Oh,
and that's really, really cool. And, I'm sure that as we go forward, we'll probably feature other people that you may know in the places that you've been to and stuff like that. I know that we want to get Chicago on because they have a great presence and everything.
Yeah, it was a good group.
But we're not talking about them. So tell us about the Mile High Magpies. Tell us what it's like being a Newcastle supporter in Denver. What's a match day like for you guys? Tell us all that. That's really what we'd like to know.
Match days with us are a lot of fun. So we were getting like really good numbers for a while. Then COVID hit, and now we've been seeing fewer. That's why you already see fewer of those in our pictures. But if you go back, you'll see we actually have a really solid group. It's a lot of fun. We have a gentleman named Adam who's from Wales, who's been a lifelong Newcastle fan. He usually leads the singing. We have about 3 or 4 people actually from Newcastle and from the Northeast in the area who also join us. We have family, we have friends, we have a lot of folks to come down. So, I mean, they're typically like pre-COVID, we were seeing like, there'd be like 20 of us.
Wow.
And we'd be loud and noisy and drinking and having a blast. And even for the early games, I've got some old pictures of, I think it was like 2 seasons ago, I think we had like 2 5:30 games in a row. And yeah, we still had about 6 or 8 people showing up even for those. If any of the 5:30 games, they know I show up with the black and white donuts.
Nice.
Aren't open. So yeah, so
we need to get that treatment.
Oh yeah,
somebody on that, Rich.
Yeah. So we've been really lucky to have great support from the previous bar and obviously from the Celtic as well. The owners of the Celtic. Like I said, one is from Galway, and then his wife is from Wales, and they're a lot of fun. And they have been supporting soccer in our community for quite some time. In fact, I think they even made some national news because I guess during the World Cup, the Iceland group like converged on the Celtic, and they were watching all the Iceland matches there. They support the Colorado Rapids, so they've always kind of had, a great foothold within the footballing community here in Denver, and they've been just nothing but gracious to us. Whatever we need, they've provided. They've got tons of televisions in there. They can always get us on like 2 or 3 TVs if we have a big group. So it's just been fantastic. And again, the other fan groups that we share the bar with.
I was going to ask, it's because it's not unfortunately just not a Newcastle bar, right? It's
no. We share with the Arsenal, the Arsenal fan group and the West Ham fan group, and they're a lot of fun. However, lately, because of just sheer numbers, there've been other fan groups that show up there. For example, like the Watford group, they've got like about 4 or 5 guys that show up.
Okay.
Varsity group,
weird Watford resurgence now too.
Right.
Out here.
I know, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's Sissoko. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, right? They got Sissoko and Youngmont now. Youngmont's probably gone, but
yeah.
But yeah, and then there's also a Leicester group, a small Leicester group that meets there, full of their devoted fans. But for the most part, it's us 3, and they've been great about like opening early, making sure we get seated, making sure that our match is always on. And like we thank them so much. And I'm not sure. I know there are a lot of folks out there who are probably watching this who probably are already aware, who are already Newcastle fans. They know, there's a Toon Army meetups where all the fan groups converge on one city.
I wanted to talk to you about that because you actually put me in the know about that. As I was trying to kind of collate a list of groups that are based in America specifically for the show. I didn't tell you at the time that that's what this was for, but because I know
San Diego,
podcasts are taking our idea, right? But yeah. So tell us about that because I actually didn't know about this. A couple of the guys in our San Diego group knew about this, but apparently, so is it for it's only been for a few years, right? That there's been a meetup somewhere in America where all of the kind of US based groups converge, correct?
Yeah, so historically it was the home derby. However, home-wear derby. However, that's not really an issue anymore.
No,
it hasn't been for some time.
Yeah.
So it was New York hosted it first, and then Dallas hosted it, and then Chicago hosted it. And when we were relegated, I don't believe we had one that year. So 2 years, a year off, and then I think 1 year back, and then the following year we hosted it. And what happened? That's traditionally all it was. We just get together, go to a bar, watch the match. And for me, I'm like, that's great, but let's do something more. Like let's make it a bigger event. I'm not going to have people fly all over the country to watch a match that they could watch at home. Where's the deal? So I decided to take it next level. I wanted to spotlight just how special Denver is and what a great community we have here. And also just, how proud I am of our group and how much I love all of our members. And I said, let's do a full weekend because these folks are going to be flying anyway.
Yeah.
And they're going to be taking the whole weekend anyway. So what I did was the first thing I did is we definitely have to have a brewery tour because it's Denver and major beer mecca. So got the brewery tour going. Decided, hey, let's even have like a meet and greet because I felt like if everybody shows up for the match, are people really going to be able to match the names and the faces of everybody that we know on social media, just like now?
Yeah.
So let's do a Friday meet and greet when they fly in. Saturday we'll host the game. After that, let me get some buses together. I had everybody just get on a brewery tour. I contacted a company and bought 2 buses and got everybody on a brewery tour. And it was during this time then that, I was contacted by the folks over at SB Nation who do the Coming Home Newcastle podcast. And they said, hey, we've had Warren Barton on our podcast before. I think it would be great if we had him as a guest speaker. And of course, a guest speaker is like the dream of every Toon Army group to be able to bring somebody in from Newcastle who's played for the club. But the problem is, fly from the UK. Well, luckily, he's your neighbor. He's out there in San Diego. Yeah. And we had there were 2 members from our group who were incredibly generous, Bob and Jan Hampy, who put up the points to fly him out on their airline miles, which was terribly generous of them because they wanted to see it happen. And for a while, it was like, can we really do this? And I was like, yeah, we can. And then Noel, who runs the bar, who runs the Celtic, was like, I know somebody at a hotel who can get you a deluxe room at a cheaper rate. I'm like, great. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is actually going to happen. So they came out, they did a live podcast. Warren Barton did a whole Q&A.
Right.
It was a lot of fun. And then the following day on Sunday, then that night we had another party, and then Sunday was like a hangover brunch, and we did food, and we had everybody meet at one of our favorite breweries, and before everybody got sent home on a plane. So it was a whole weekend, and it was a lot of fun, and it was, I guess, the biggest turnout for any of the Toon Army events. And people were like, they were asking me like, how did you come up with all this? I'm like, well, I pulled out my money out of my savings, and I so I funded all of this, right? It was, it was, a few $1,000s, and people were like, well, why would you do this? I'm like, because I wanted the greatest Toon Army meetup in history. I wanted it to be the gold standard, and I would motivate others to be able to do the same. And I didn't know if I was going to get paid back. And it was the first Toon Army that we ever like asked for tickets and donations for. Right. But I came within about like, I don't know, $300 or $400, which is what I would have spent to go to somebody else's meetup anyway.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm cool with that as long as everybody had a good time. So and that's the thing. Like when people talk about like how great our fan base is, that's what I'm saying. It's like everybody came together. I took this massive financial risk, and it paid off, all because we have such a great fan base. All because I wanted to create an event unlike any other that had been done before. And now, like, we took another vote, and everybody was all excited. And I know Toon Army Baltimore was supposed to host. However, sadly, theirs got canceled due to COVID. But they're still slated to host. And I know those guys, and they are fantastic. And I know they got something really special planned. So I would encourage all of the fan groups, once again, converge on Baltimore, turn it black and white. Let's have a lot of fun. Let's watch it together. And, hey, it's going to be a great party.
That's so cool. I mean, first and foremost, that Rich and I will definitely be at the next meetup. I'm already like, we're gonna have to do a United States like coverage episode of that. That sounds like our
live podcast.
Yeah, that's my dream, right? And when you guys had told me about that, I was like, oh my god, like I have to even at the very minimum go or be involved in some way and stuff like that. And we definitely are planning on having Baltimore on eventually as well, of course, and especially to promo that. But that sounds really, really cool. That's like, I mean, like, that's what it's all about, right? Yeah. Is just getting together and supporting your club, and it's that's that's the whole aim of this podcast as well, is to unite the state of Newcastle United in the United States. Anytime I can get a pun in, I will, right?
We were, and that's the thing. It's like, that's again, I mean, that's what makes Mile High Magpie so special, right? Yeah. It wasn't just like the help from Noel and from the Hampies, but it was other folks. I mean, even the Hogshead Brewery, they gave everybody who showed up on Friday a free pint. I paid and gave everybody a free pint glass, so I could have that beer in a Mile High Magpies pint glass who showed up.
That's cool.
And it was because, and they turned me on to the company that does all the glass etching, which wasn't far from them. So it's just, again, that whole coming together. And even some of the other swag that we had, I mean, large of that was just relationships that I had, cultivated, because I knew that I really wanted a special event here. So even Altitude Awards and Apparel that put together our scarf order, it was a great event, not just because I wanted it to be, but again, it was that collective of everybody in our group and the relationships that I had forged and everybody's just willingness to help out. And that's what really makes, Mile High Magpies so special, is that we're not just a Newcastle group, we're also good friends.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree with that sentiment, because that's how I feel about the San Diego crew, and and stuff. And I'm sure Rich agrees, right? We're friends, right? You look at me as a friend, right? Like
a brother.
There we go.
I'm so excited.
That's really cool. Well, we'll definitely be. I know I'm now in the chat with all of you guys on what that next meetup's going to look like, and of course, anything that GallowgateShots, the United States, myself and Rich, Toon Army San Diego, anything that we can do to not only promote but help get involved, we'll be more than happy to. And we would love to not only be there, but see that be another great event like the one that you've described. And we are coming up on 2 hours, and that's pretty long for us, but we're totally cool with it because it's the greatest week ever. But you wanted to, before we close and kind of send you guys on your way, just kind of hear what your your hopes or dreams are for the United States fan base for Newcastle United going forward in lieu of everything that's happened this week. Like what are you wishing for? What do you hope kind of comes out of this for us? Because I know Stavely and company are going to really want to build the brand on an international level, and I know a lot of people are jumping on this wagon of like, I was a fan before, because they're anticipating a lot more fans coming in, which I welcome wholeheartedly. How could I not? But what are you guys? What are your guys' hopes and wishes for the future?
Josh, you want to go? You want me to go?
No, you should go, Tony. I feel like I've talked too much already.
So polite, Tony.
I'd like to see us come back. We haven't been here since 2015. At least I think so, because I was there in Milwaukee when we were here. So maybe a U.S. tour, because most of the other big clubs in the world have gone to the States, and it's a big way to grow. And especially if we sign some people, sell some Castor shirts and fill up the AT&T Stadium or wherever the biggest stadiums in the country are. So to get us here, I mean, I could see them maybe doing like a Middle East tour, but at least the smart thing would be to come here to the US to grow that fan base in the easiest way possible, is just having us play the big sides in the world. And the ambassadors, I would say another big thing would be to get Shearer on and to see him part of the club, and Keegan, Rob Lee, just anyone they can get would be nice, just to be spokesman for the club. So that's the biggest thing I would like to see, and then to know that the training ground and just a plan. And well, the first thing I would like to see is Graham Jones in charge, but hopefully that's tomorrow. So maybe I'm getting too excited about that.
Yeah.
But I think there could be some news tomorrow, maybe.
Yeah. Actually, we're releasing tomorrow, so it would be today, I guess. But yes,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, so today,
we're all anticipating that news.
Later today.
Yeah,
I'm sure Steve Bruce
today,
is human, but just give me Graham Jones in full charge.
Yeah.
So
how about yourself, Josh?
Ideally, I mean, obviously, I think the U.S. market is obviously the fastest emerging market in the footballing world. Certainly now with this purchase, Newcastle fans cannot be ignored or sidelined. And yes, our fan base is only going to grow. I know how big it has been in Denver when we're successful, and I've already received a ton of messages from people who are excited to come back and see what sort of the rebirth is going to look like. And I would love to see a connection between us and the club in a way in which, we have sort of an American ambassadorship for fans on this side of the pond. I would love to see, Stavely even like, hey, we're giving away 4 seats to American fans, come and experience, St. James Park, because there's so many of us here who maybe not can't afford to, or can't get away, or might not otherwise make that trip. I know for me, I've never been to a match there, mostly because of Ashley, again, part of my sort of financial boycott. But now that that's kind of gone away, I mean, I'm eager to book my ticket and go as well. And I feel like them reaching out and having that connection to the club and to our global fan base, I think it's going to uplift the club as a whole, not just for fans, but also knowing that these players are beloved, not only just in their own backyard, but all over, and that we're all watching, and that we're all, excited for everything that they're going to do and everything this club can achieve. And that's ultimately what I'd like to see, is just, just a big coming together, all the Newcastle United fans here in the States under one umbrella, and where we're all sharing and communicating, and we're hosting these meetups, and we're able to kind of, again, have that foothold in Newcastle and it's St. James Park.
Couldn't agree with you more. And we're really, I know I'm speaking for Rich as well, but I know he'd agree. We're really grateful for everything that you guys are doing to kind of help weave that blanket together. It's definitely our mission as well. And now it's about to get a lot more exciting. And you know, I personally, like, I have friends in Fort Collins, so I come out to Colorado at least twice a year. I'm definitely planning on coming down to Denver for a match.
Yeah.
I love Denver. It's one of my favorite cities in America. But yeah, couldn't agree more. That's what we all want is, you know, Geordies all over the world have been yearning for an ownership and a network of support that understands what it is to be a Newcastle fan. And, you know, we definitely want to emulate that in the States as well. And so, you know, we all have the same mission now. And I think that that's great. And I think that it's great we could get together and talk about that, you know, in a kind of live virtual setting. But we are coming up on time. So I do want to just say thank you so much for coming on to the United States, being our first supporters group that we featured. We're really excited to share this with the fan base and everything like that. Do you guys have any closing remarks before we kind of sign out?
I'm just happy, so I'm just excited.
We're all speechless and full of gratitude at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, you know, to everybody out there, you know, come out of Denver, lift a pint with us, join us for a match. We always love meeting other Newcastle fans. We have some even that, you know, even travel from Newcastle because they're here in Denver on business. And it's just a wonderful community here. So I would encourage anybody, even in your own, you know, cities, to get involved, you know, form groups of your own, find other fans. It's a lot more fun to watch those games with folks than to be watching them alone, for sure. So
100%.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys. Like I said, again, really appreciate you coming on. Thank you to GallowgateShots for putting this together. We're really happy to have this, you know, the United States, and we're really happy to wrap on our first official episode, featuring, you know, Adam Beckett and the Mile High Magpies, Toon Army Denver. And, you know, we'll make sure to plug all the socials when we post the episode so that if you're looking for anything in the Denver area, you know who to contact. And I think that's it for today. Rich, you got anything?
No, just looking forward to each day this week. You know?
Sunday.
Different appointment.
Okay. Graham Jones dugout.
I want to look forward to that with the win. You know, let's get a win first.
Yes.
You know? And then maybe Antonio Conte might come if we get a win.
Yes.
It's what I would say to every fan is just get strapped in because it's going to be a roller coaster. Like, you know, that's it.
I think that's a perfect way to close it. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. This is the United States, brought to you by GallowgateShots. Looking forward to doing another episode and interacting with you all very soon. If you do not have me on Twitter, SoCal Jordy, pop me a message if your supporters group's not on my list. Would love to feature you guys. And thanks again to GallowgateShots. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Toon. Away the lads.